Dave Hawkins was having a terrible day, which made it exactly like the 3,000 terrible days that had preceded it. The difference today was that the artificial gravity on his rust bucket cargo ship had decided to fail spectacularly mid-flight, sending his breakfast burrito floating directly into the ship's ventilation system. "Another Tuesday in paradise," Dave muttered as he navigated his ship toward the docking clamps of Outpost 7, a space station that resembled a giant metallic octopus with unfortunate digestive issues. Clouds of coolant leaked from various ports, giving the whole structure the appearance of a sea creature caught in an underwater sneeze. Outpost 7 was the armpit of the galaxy if armpits were freezing cold, smelled like burnt circuitry, and were populated by the most diverse collection of scoundrels this side of the Orion Arm. Perfect for a human cargo pilot trying to make an honest adjacent living. Docking complete. Welcome to Outpost 7. Please enjoy your stay and remember to keep all appendages inside designated species zones, announced the station's AI in a voice that suggested it had long given up on life. Dave disembarked carrying a small insulated bag containing his lunch, a sandwich lovingly crafted from the least expired items in his ship's food storage unit. He had a 4-hour layover while his cargo of certified legal trade goods was being inspected, which gave him just enough time to source the parts needed to fix his ship's gravity generator. The main concourse of Outpost 7 was crowded with beings from across the galaxy. Massive 4-armed Crixians haggled with diminutive Plex traders. Vaporform Nexuloids drifted above, communicating via pulsating lights that occasionally formed obscene shapes when they thought no one was watching. Humans were relatively new to the galactic community, having stumbled upon faster-than-light travel after an intern at CERN spilled coffee on exactly the right set of controls. 50 years later, humans were still regarded with a mixture of amusement and confusion by most established species. As Dave pushed through the crowd, he noticed a small figure huddled in an alcove between a nutrient dispensary and a pawn shop advertising "We buy gold, platinum, and existential regrets." The figure wore tattered robes with a deep hood hiding its features. A small cup sat on the ground before it. Everyone was giving the beggar a wide berth, even in the crowded station. Dave intended to do the same until the figure looked up slightly, just enough for him to glimpse a pair of eyes that shimmered like opals catching moonlight. Dave paused. He was no bleeding heart. You didn't survive a decade of interstellar shipping by giving away your resources. But something about those eyes. "Ah, hell," he sighed, reaching into his bag and pulling out his sandwich. "Here. It's not much, but it's better than nothing. Just don't tell anyone I'm going soft." The hooded figure's hand emerged slowly from the robe's slender fingers with iridescent skin that seemed to shift colors with each movement. The hand paused, then reached up to pull back the hood. Dave had expected to see any number of alien faces, perhaps a down-on-their-luck Meridian with their characteristic spiral horns, or maybe one of those fuzzy Lorians who were always getting their fur caught in machinery. What he didn't expect was to find himself staring into the face of the most notorious missing person in the galaxy. "Holy hyperdrive," Dave whispered, nearly dropping his sandwich. "You're Queen Thalassa of the Nixians." The woman before him had skin that rippled with bioluminescent patterns, shifting through colors like the northern lights trapped in human form. Her eyes were entirely silver, with no visible pupils, yet somehow managed to convey both amusement and weariness. She corrected, her voice melodious but rough around the edges, as if she hadn't spoken in some time. "Currently I am nobody. Or perhaps I am Beggar 7 on Outpost 7. There's a pleasing symmetry to that, don't you think?" Dave glanced around nervously. "Do you have any idea how many bounty hunters are looking for you? The hegemony has plastered your face on every bulletin board from here to the Crab Nebula." "Hence the hood," Thalassa replied dryly. "It's remarkably effective when combined with the general tendency of spacers to avoid eye contact with the destitute." She tilted her head. "Yet you stopped." Dave shifted uncomfortably. Temporary lapse in judgment. "Won't happen again." Thalassa took a delicate bite of the sandwich and made a face that suggested she was reconsidering her entire life path. What is this substance? Peanut butter and nutrient paste. It's an acquired taste. I believe acquiring that taste might require evolutionary changes, she said, but continued eating nonetheless. I haven't consumed anything but recycled water for 3 standard cycles. Dave's curiosity overrode his better judgment. How does a queen end up begging on a backwater station like this? Shouldn't you be sitting on a throne made of star crystals or whatever? My throne was made of compressed quantum foam, actually, Thalassa said with surprising casualness. But to answer your question, a coup, betrayal, the usual royal problems. The hegemony decided my policies of peaceful expansion and cultural exchange were incompatible with their preference for aggressive resource acquisition. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. They tried to execute me publicly, but my royal guardian sacrificed himself to help me escape. I've been moving from station to station ever since, but my resources are gone and my supporters. Her voice trailed off. Let me guess, Dave said. Executed or imprisoned? Or worse, promoted within the new regime, Thalassa replied with a grimace. My people are somewhat adaptable with their loyalties. Dave stood up, prepared to walk away. This wasn't his problem. The last thing he needed was to get involved with galactic politics. He had 3 separate loans on his ship and a contract to deliver industrial fabricators to Centauri Prime within the week. Well, good luck with the whole deposed monarchs thing. I've got parts to buy and a ship to fix. Thalassa reached out, her fingers barely brushing his sleeve. I need passage to the Nixian sector. No one would think to look for me on a human cargo vessel. You're insane, Dave said flatly. That's practically hegemony headquarters now. Precisely why I must return, she replied. My people suffer under their rule, and there is a ceremony approaching the convergence when I can reclaim my rightful place. And why would I risk my neck for this? Thalassa smiled, and somehow it made the lights beneath her skin glow brighter. Because humans have a fascinating weakness for 2 things, profit and doing the right thing while complaining about it the entire time. Dave stared at her for a long moment. I already regret this. Getting Queen Thalassa aboard Dave's ship without drawing attention required creativity, a blatant disregard for customs regulations, and a cargo crate with hastily drilled air holes. Welcome aboard the Rusty Nail, Dave announced as he popped open the crate once they were safely in orbit. Don't let the name fool you, she's actually much worse than she sounds. Thalassa emerged with as much dignity as one could muster after being smuggled like contraband. She surveyed the ship's cluttered cargo hold with curious silver eyes. It's compact, she offered diplomatically. That's one word for it, came a new voice, distinctly female and dripping with artificial sarcasm. Others might include decrepit, hazardous, or my personal favorite, one air recycler failure away from becoming a floating coffin. Dave sighed. And that charming voice belongs to Mabel, the ship's AI. She came with the vessel when I bought it, and unfortunately her personality core is fused to the main systems. A design feature, not a flaw, Mabel corrected. Dave, would you care to explain why you've brought royalty aboard? Our life insurance policy specifically excludes harboring fugitive monarchs under Section 47B. We have life insurance? Dave asked, genuinely surprised. No, but if we did, this would void it. Thalassa approached the nearest speaker panel. I am grateful for your hospitality, Mabel. I understand the inconvenience and risk. Ooh, manners, Mabel replied. How refreshing. Dave usually communicates in grunts and creative profanity. Dave led Thalassa to the ship's tiny galley. You'll have to bunk in the storage compartment behind the engine room. It's not exactly palace accommodations. I've spent the last 3 months sleeping in maintenance ducts and cargo containers, Thalassa replied. Anything with actual bedding will feel luxurious. As the rusty nail broke orbit, Dave outlined their journey. We'll have to make 2 scheduled stops before we can head toward Nixian space. I've got deliveries that can't wait, or I don't get paid. Thalassa nodded. I understand. Perhaps I can make myself useful during the journey? This led to the surreal experience of teaching a deposed alien queen how to repair faulty wiring in the ship's gravity generator. Thalassa proved surprisingly adept, her slender fingers perfectly suited for delicate electronics work. On Nixia, our young are taught mechanical skills alongside diplomatic arts, she explained while reconnecting a particularly troublesome circuit. We believe that understanding how things function is essential to ruling wisely. On Earth, our politicians can barely operate a toaster without a scandal, Dave replied. Their first few days settled into an unexpected rhythm. Dave would pilot and maintain the ship, while Thalassa assisted with repairs and shared stories of her homeworld. Mabel kept up a running commentary on everything, occasionally interrupted by warnings about system failures that she categorized from mildly concerning to perhaps we should write our wills. On the 4th day, as they approached their first delivery point at Galileo Station, Mabel's voice cut through with unusual urgency. Incoming transmission on all emergency channels. It's a hegemony alert. The view screen flickered to life, showing a stern-faced Nixian officer. Like Thalassa, his skin rippled with color, though his patterns were rigid and militaristic, pulsing in sharp red angles. Attention all vessels. New intelligence confirms the fugitive Queen Thalassa is alive and may be seeking passage toward Nixian space. The reward for information leading to her capture has been doubled. All ships will be subject to enhanced scanning procedures. Dave glanced at Thalassa, who had gone very still, her skin fading to a pale blue. Well, Dave said with forced cheerfulness, this is going to complicate things. They barely made it through the inspection at Galileo Station. Dave had hastily constructed a shielded compartment beneath the floor panels of his cabin, where Thalassa hid while hegemony officers performed a cursory scan of the vessel. As they departed, a hegemony patrol ship fell into formation behind them. They're following us, Mabel announced unnecessarily. I can see that. Thank you, Dave replied through gritted teeth. Any helpful suggestions? Prayer? Last rites? A strongly worded letter to your insurance company about that policy we don't actually have? The hegemony patrol ship maintained a calculated distance close enough to monitor, far enough to suggest they weren't completely certain the rusty nail was worth their full attention. They're scanning us, Mabel reported. Typical hegemony sweep pattern. If they detect any Nixian biosignatures, we're in deep trouble. Deeper than your usual trouble, which is already impressively deep. Dave turned to Thalassa, who sat in the co-pilot's chair, her luminous skin now dimmed to a nervous gray. Any ideas? You're the royal fugitive here. The hegemony operates on logic and probability, she replied. Their tactical algorithms are excellent at predicting standard evasion patterns. So we need to be illogical, Dave mused. Well, humans excel at being completely irrational. Mabel, plot a course for the Kelper asteroid field. The dense, highly volatile, notoriously unpredictable Kelper asteroid field? Mabel asked. The one that's killed 17 experienced pilots this standard year alone? That's the one. Just checking. Course plotted. It was nice knowing both of you. As they approached the asteroid field, the hegemony ship transmitted a warning. Human vessel, you are entering a hazardous navigation zone. Alter course immediately. Dave responded by increasing speed. They think we're making a delivery run through the asteroids to avoid taxes. Pretty common smuggler trick. Thalassa gripped the edges of her seat as they plunged into the chaotic dance of spinning rocks. Is this a common human strategy? Risking certain death to avoid possible death? We call it Tuesday, Dave replied, his hands flying over the controls. The ship jerked violently as he navigated through the spinning debris. The hegemony ships are too valuable to risk in here. They'll either wait on the other side or give up entirely. The Rusty Nail was never designed for this kind of maneuvering, but its small size and Dave's questionable but effective piloting kept them weaving through the asteroid field. The hegemony ship initially followed, maintaining a cautious distance, but turned back after a particularly dense cluster of asteroids threatened to box it in. "They're breaking off pursuit," Mabel announced with something approaching respect in her synthetic voice. "I calculate a 0.01% chance they expected us to survive that maneuver." As they emerged from the asteroid field, Dave allowed himself a small smile of triumph. The feeling lasted approximately 12 seconds before the ship's warning systems blared. "Multiple signatures," Mabel announced. 3 hegemony interceptors entering from Sector 9. They must have called for backup while we were in the field. "Perfect," Dave muttered. "Any other good news?" "The gravity generator you fixed is failing again," Mabel replied cheerfully. As if on cue, everything not secured to the ship's deck began floating upward, including several tools Dave had carelessly left on the console. Thalassa reached out, her fingers dancing in the air as she plucked a floating wrench from its trajectory toward an important-looking button. "I believe humans have an expression about situations like this. Something about excrement and ventilation devices." "Close enough," Dave replied, frantically plotting a new course. "Mabel, how close are we to the Arcturian Nebula?" 15 minutes at maximum thrust, which, given the current state of our engines, means roughly 30 minutes in reality. Set course. And reroute power from life support if you have to. Already reducing oxygen levels by 15%. I suggest shallow breathing and limited conversation, which would be a first for you. The hegemony interceptors were gaining quickly. Unlike the patrol ship, these vessels were designed for pursuit and combat. The lead ship fired a warning shot that sizzled past their viewport, leaving a trail of ionized particles. "They're charging weapons for a disabling shot," Mabel warned. That's when Dave executed what would later be known in certain smuggler circles as the Hawkins maneuver, though most would agree it should have been called the complete idiot's last resort. He cut all engines, allowing the Rusty Nail to go dark and drift, then rerouted every available power source into a single, massive engine burst timed exactly as they crossed into the nebula's outer boundary. The result was spectacular, in the same way that watching someone set themselves on fire is spectacular. The nebula's gases ignited in their wake, creating a blinding flash that temporarily disrupted the hegemony ship's sensors. By the time they recovered, the Rusty Nail had disappeared into the dense clouds of the nebula, its engines once again dark as they drifted on momentum alone. Inside the ship, Dave and Thalassa floated in the disabled gravity field, breathing the increasingly thin air as they waited in darkness. "That," Thalassa whispered, her skin glowing just enough to illuminate Dave's grinning face, "was the most terrifying and exhilarating experience of my 122 cycles of existence." "Humans call that Tuesday too," Dave replied. After drifting through the nebula for 6 hours with minimal life support and no gravity, even Mabel had stopped making sarcastic comments, which Dave found more concerning than the oxygen warnings. They finally emerged on the far side, making a brief stop at a remote mining outpost where Dave called in several favors to refuel and make emergency repairs. The Rusty Nail limped toward Nixian space, now disguised with falsified registry codes and hastily applied hull markings identifying it as a waste management vessel. "Nobody looks twice at garbage ships," Dave explained as they approached the outer Nixian security perimeter. "It's the perfect cover. I never imagined my return to my homeworld would be aboard a vessel with hazardous waste, approach at own risk emblazoned on its hull," Thalassa mused, her skin cycling through thoughtful patterns of green and blue. As they planned their approach, Thalassa revealed more about Nixian culture and the significance of the upcoming convergence ceremony. "Every 50 cycles, our 3 moons align perfectly above the royal temple," she explained. It's the only time when the Crown of Ages can be activated. Whoever wears the crown during the convergence is recognized by ancient law as the rightful ruler. So we just need to get you to this temple, slap on a fancy hat, and wait for the moons to line up, Dave asked. Doesn't sound too difficult. The temple will be heavily guarded. The hegemony knows the significance of the convergence. And the crown isn't just ceremonial, it's a powerful artifact that connects with the wearer's biorhythms to verify royal lineage. Dave leaned back in his chair, which creaked ominously. Great. A heist and a coronation all in one day. Mabel's voice interjected. According to my calculations, the convergence begins in exactly 26 hours. That gives you very little time to infiltrate a heavily guarded planet, reach a sacred temple, and overthrow a government. When you put it that way, it sounds almost impossible, Dave remarked. Oh, it's definitely impossible, Mabel replied cheerfully. I've run 17 million simulations, and you die horribly in every single one. Thalassa's expression grew serious. There is something else you should know. She hesitated. My people have legends about the time of change, when a stranger from beyond the stars would help restore the true ruler during the darkness. Dave stared at her. Are you saying there's some kind of prophecy about this? Not just any prophecy, Thalassa said, her skin rippling with embarrassment. A prophecy specifically about a human. The sacred texts describe a being with skin that does not change, eyes like earth and sky, who travels in a vessel of rust and determination. That's oddly specific, Dave said suspiciously. Thalassa avoided his gaze. Our seers are very precise. Right. And what does this prophecy say happens to the human afterward? They live happily ever after, or they get sacrificed on some altar. The texts are unclear on that particular detail, Thalassa admitted. Dave sighed deeply. Fantastic. As they finalized their approach to Nixia, disguised as a waste collection vessel answering a routine service call, Dave found himself memorizing Nixian ceremonial phrases that Thalassa insisted would be necessary. No, she corrected for the dozenth time. The inflection must rise on the third syllable. Like this, Ishe nevra tuliax. Se evra tuliax, Dave repeated dutifully. And this means I come in peace? More or less, Thalassa replied with a slight smile. The literal translation is closer to I surrender my weapons but retain my dignity. How very Nixian, Dave commented, verbose even in surrender. As they entered Nixian space, passing through the security checkpoints with their falsified waste management credentials, Thalassa grew quieter, her skin shifting to deep blues and purples as she gazed at her homeworld through the view screen. I never thought I would see it again, she whispered. The Azure Peninsula, the Crystal Mountains, home. Dave found himself uncharacteristically moved by her expression. Well, let's make sure you get to stay this time. The plan, like most of Dave's plans, was elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its execution. They would land at the capital city's industrial sector under their waste management cover, use maintenance tunnels to access the temple district, and then create what Dave enthusiastically called a classic human diversion to allow Thalassa to reach the Crown of Ages during the convergence. When you say classic human diversion, Thalassa asked as they prepared to disembark, now disguised in maintenance worker uniforms, what exactly do you mean? Dave grinned, patting a bag filled with an assortment of items he'd collected from various storage compartments around the ship. Humans have elevated causing chaos to an art form. Trust me. The capital city of Nixia was a breathtaking blend of crystalline architecture and living technology. Buildings seemed to pulse with energy, connected by transparent walkways that shimmered in the light of the three moons beginning their celestial alignment overhead. Moving through the maintenance tunnels beneath the city, they emerged near the temple district just as the ceremonial procession began. Hegemony officials marched in formation, their skin patterns synchronized in militant precision, while crowds of Nixians watched with faces carefully devoid of emotion. "They're afraid," Thalassa whispered. "My people should be celebrating the convergence, not standing in silent dread." The royal temple rose before them, a spiraling structure that seemed to be trying to reach the converging moons. Guards were positioned at every entrance, their posture rigid and watchful. "Time for that diversion," Dave said, reaching into his bag. "When the commotion starts, head for the eastern entrance. It's the most direct route to the crown chamber according to your blueprints." "What about you?" Thalassa asked. Dave shrugged. "I'll improvise. It's what humans do best." What followed was precisely the sort of chaos that only a human could orchestrate with limited resources and unlimited audacity. Using a combination of the ship's emergency flares, a canister of compressed air, and Mabel's ability to hack into local communication networks, Dave created the impression of a reactor breach in the nearby energy district. As alarms blared and guards rushed to coordinate evacuation procedures, Thalassa slipped into the temple, moving with the confidence of someone who had spent her life in its hallways. Dave followed at a distance, creating smaller diversions whenever she risked discovery. They reached the crown chamber just as the three moons became visible through the temple's crystal dome, their light converging in a single beam that illuminated the crown of ages, a circlet of material that seemed to be neither metal nor stone, but something in between that pulsed with its own inner light. And there, waiting beside it, stood the leader of the hegemony, General Vrix, his skin patterns flashing aggressive red and black as he smiled coldly at Thalassa. "My queen," he said with mocking deference. "How kind of you to return for your execution." "You always lacked imagination, Vrix," Thalassa replied, her voice steady despite the guards now surrounding them. "Did you really think I wouldn't anticipate your presence here?" "What I didn't anticipate," Vrix said, turning his attention to Dave, "was your human pet. The legendary helper from the prophecy? He looks rather underwhelming." Dave raised his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of surrender. "I get that a lot." Vrix gestured to his guards. "Kill the human first. Let her watch." "Wait." Dave called out, "Don't I get last words? It's a sacred human tradition to grant condemned prisoners final speech." Vrix hesitated, then nodded with cruel amusement. "By all means. Make it brief." Dave cleared his throat and locked eyes with Thalassa, who was watching him intently. Then, with careful inflection, he pronounced, "Yesayev Ra Tuliax." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, every Nixian in the room except Vrix dropped to one knee, their skin patterns shifting to match Thalassa's colors. "What is this treachery?" Vrix demanded, looking around wildly at his kneeling guards. Thalassa smiled. "You never bothered to learn the old tongue, did you, Vrix? What my human friend actually said was the ancient oath of allegiance to the crown. These soldiers may have served you under duress, but their true loyalty was never forgotten." As Vrix lunged for the crown of ages in desperation, the beam of moonlight reaching its perfect convergence, Dave executed a perfect tackle that would have made his high school football coach proud. They tumbled across the polished floor as Thalassa stepped into the light, placing the crown upon her head. The chamber filled with radiance as the crown bonded with her, her skin erupting in patterns more complex and beautiful than anything Dave had witnessed before. The kneeling Nixians rose, their colors shifting to harmonize with their queen's. Vrix was quickly restrained, his protests silenced by the overwhelming display of unified loyalty to the restored monarch. Later, as celebrations filled the streets of the capital, Dave found himself on a balcony overlooking the city, nursing a drink that tasted surprisingly like mango juice despite its alarming purple color. "So," Thalassa said, joining him in royal regalia that made her luminous skin even more dazzling, "the prophecy was fulfilled. The stranger from beyond the stars helped restore the true ruler." "About that prophecy," Dave said, turning to face her. It was a little too convenient, don't you think? Skin that does not change, eyes like earth and sky, who travels in a vessel of rust and determination. Thalassa's skin rippled with what Dave had come to recognize as Nixian amusement. Our intelligence network has been monitoring Earth for decades. When I needed to escape the hegemony, I specifically sought out a human who matched our, let's call it a tactical prediction, rather than a prophecy. Dave stared at her in disbelief, then burst into laughter. You engineered the entire thing. Our chance meeting wasn't chance at all. I selected you specifically, Dave Hawkins, she admitted. Your flight patterns were predictable, your financial situation made you open to risk, and your psychological profile suggested a tendency toward helping others despite your efforts to appear cynical. You manipulated me, Dave said, but there was no anger in his voice. I offered an opportunity, Thalassa corrected. You still chose to help. That choice was genuine. Dave considered this. So what happens now? I go back to hauling cargo and complaining about life? Actually, Thalassa said, her skin shifting to colors Dave hadn't seen before. Nixie has never had an official human ambassador. Our people could benefit from someone who understands human. What did you call it? The logical irrationality? Dave looked out over the crystalline city, where Nixians celebrated in the streets, their skin patterns creating waves of color that rippled through the crowds like living art. I'm not exactly diplomat material, he said doubtfully. No, Thalassa agreed with a smile. You're something far more valuable. You're the human who offered kindness to a ragged alien beggar and shattered galactic history in the process. Dave raised his strange purple drink in a toast, to poor judgment and even worse timing. We call that Tuesday on Nixia too, Thalassa replied, touching her glass to his as the three moons continued their cosmic dance overhead.